Hello, today we will be learning about the machine setup for Workcenter 400 in the Grille Expand area. The Weldon double-sided expander is a heavy-duty manufacturing machine that takes aluminum and copper tubes placed inside grills and cores and expands them slightly by inserting long metal rods into each of them. This process permanently fixes the fins so they are evenly spaced apart for proper airflow when operating in the field. The 46A side of the machine, Workcenter 400, is used to expand tubes for cores and grills larger than 30 inches in diameter. We'll be going over the setup for the 46A side of the machine in this lesson. First, make sure the machine is powered on with the handle on the side. This switch is to remain on unless there is an emergency or unless turned off by maintenance staff. Take a few moments to examine the machine. Visually check the hydraulic fluid level and check for any leaks coming from the fluid lines. Make sure all parts of the machine are in working order. The rods are not bent or damaged, and there are no loose bolts or nuts or cracks in any of the equipment. Make sure there is nothing in the way of the machine, and press the green pump start button. You will know the machine is energized when the button is illuminated. If the button does not light up, check the emergency stop button to see if it is engaged and switch it off. Flip the hydraulic switch on the control panel to see if it works. This controls the hydraulic jack for the fixture table that holds the cores and grills as they are expanded. Verify the rest of the functions on the panel are working properly. If you do find any irregularities with any part of the machine, notify your supervisor or lead and they will contact maintenance to fix the issue. You will also have to do some weekly maintenance to the machine. Every week you must drain the water condensate from the air lines. Simply open the valve on the bottom of the drain, wait for all the water to drain, then close the valve. The fittings on the ram plates must also be greased weekly. Grab the grease gun from the tool cabinet. To make this easier, lower the ram all the way so you can reach the fittings. Grease the fittings until some starts to come out so you know it is full, and wipe away the excess grease. Over-greasing can also be an issue, so be aware the fittings don't always need much grease depending on how much the machine has been operating. But be sure you are checking them weekly and filling out the maintenance checklist. Refer to the machine's operator maintenance checklist for more information on greasing the fittings as well as what else to maintain and how often to do so. Once you are sure the machine can be set up properly, move on to changing the bars for operation. These spacer bars help set the position of the ram head for the part you are making. There is a specific length bar needed for every length of tube you are expanding. As the first step in changing from one setup to another, always refer to the 3x5 setup cards for all the information you need to operate on that part. You can find these in a container on shelves in the area. Match the number of the bar on the setup card with the part number or unit number on the routing slip that came with the parts. Additional information can be found on the blueprint attached to the routing slip. Ask your supervisor or lead for help if you are unsure if the information on the setup card is correct. In order to change the bars, power the control panel with the pump start button and fully lower the ram with the ram down button until you see the side clamps lock. Place one C-clamp on each side as shown. Loosen the 4 Allen head screws in the head clamp so it will move. With the screws loose and clamps in place, you can now raise the ram head along with the plates. This will allow you to remove the bars. Caution: if there is ever an emergency, immediately press the red emergency stop button to cut off power to the control panel. Make sure this is not pressed before moving on. Remove the old bars, return them to the storage racks, and place the new ones. Each is marked with a L and R, and you'll see where the metal has rubbed on the bars so you can be sure you are placing them correctly. Slowly lower the ram until the head is touching the bars and the clamps lock in again. Check to make sure the tops of the bars are as close to even with the ram head as you can get them. The bend on the bar must also be as close to straight with the middle of the head clamp as you can get it. Once the new bars are set and secure, retighten the ram head clamp Allen screws and then remove the 2 C-clamps. When you're done, fully lower the ram with the control panel. Let's take a few moments to review what we learned about changing bars. When changing bars, always refer to the 3x5 setup card. Remember the Allen screws on the head clamp and the C-clamps for the ram. Line up the new bars with the middle of the head clamp. Lower the ram to the bars, make sure the side clamps lock again, then tighten the Allen screws and remove the C-clamps. With the new bars set, let's move on to changing the rods for the expander. Certain cores and grills require different size rods depending on their length and the material being used. Typically, you'll deal with aluminum and copper. Red Dot mainly uses 3 types of rods for this machine, plus another set for Mac grills which we will cover in another lesson. The rod types are 0.345 inches for single row aluminum, 0.365 inches for single and double row copper, and 0.368 inches for pre-finned and tubed soft fin cores. These rods are kept in separate storage racks labeled along the side. Each has a piece called a swedger and a stripper sleeve on it. The swedger is for creating flares on the ends of the tubes. Here you can see the difference between the aluminum and copper swedgers, so be aware of what type you are using. You may have to take the swedgers and sleeves from the previous rods if you don't have enough for all sets of rods. Inspect the rods for any damage like cracks to the swedgers or bends to the rods. To be able to access the rods, raise the ram all the way using the Ram Up button. As a note, it's not necessary, but it is easier to replace the rods if you remove the core fixture, also known as the gate, beforehand. Refer to the section on changing the core fixture later in this lesson for more information on how to remove the gate. You will also want to take the metal rod next to the machine and press the lever for the large black depth adjustment screws. This will raise the screws to give you more room to be able to remove the rods. Remove the 2 Allen screws set in the spacer block and set them to the side. Then remove the spacer block itself. Now you can begin to remove the rods. To remove the rods, you must grab onto the ball on the end of the rod. Make sure you are grabbing the ball, not the swedger or stripper sleeve. Press the rod back up slightly, turn it, and pull the rod out. You can see the groove cutout of the rods to get an idea of how they lock into the machine. Be careful not to drop the rods as you remove them. The impact can bend the rods or crack the rod balls or swedgers. Continue removing all of the rods until you have them all out. Refer back to the 3x5 setup card to see how many you will need for the next part you are making. You see this part has 3 rows of copper, 54 rods total at 0.368 inches in diameter, with 18 per row. The setup card says to start at the opening 10th from the left in the back row, so you will need to count over to 10 from the left side. Start by inserting the first rod here. You can place the rods in any order you wish, but it can be easier if you place the rods on the ends of each row to mark the ends of each row. To easily insert the rods, you want to barely place the end of the rod into the first hole. Do not put any upward pressure on the rod, only push forward on it lightly until it straightens and starts to slide up into the rest of the plates. If you try to push up right away, the groove end will get caught on the sides and you will be unable to fully insert the rod. You can look at the blueprint for that part to see the tube layout. Verify the rods are in the correct positions. Make sure the rods are fully inserted and won't fall out by hitting the ram down button a few times. Hold your hand beneath the rods to try to keep them from hitting the floor. Let's review what we've learned about changing the rods. Use the 3x5 setup card for which rod to use on that part. Verify the layout with the blueprint. To remove, push the rod up, twist, and pull on the ball end. To insert, place rod in the first plate hole, then only push forward on the rod until it starts to slide upward through the plates and locks in. To continue with the setup, we must learn how to change the gate that holds the cores or grills during expansion. For this operation, there are 2 types of gates used. One kind is like the 46B side of the machine, where you'll see the table raised and lowered vertically to be able to insert the jig for the grills. The other type of gate can be swung open like a door. This type of gate is used to expand cores that are already finned and tubed. These gates have adjustments for the width and height of the core. You will be able to size the gate to the core once you have it resting on the nest blocks. We're going to go over how to remove the table type gate and place the door type gate, gate 3. Double check on the setup card which type of gate to use for that unit. Reverse this process to replace the old gate when needed. To remove the old gate, first remove the two Allen screws holding the nest block in place and put the nest block back on the side. You must raise the gate using the switch on the control panel. There is a pin holding the fixture in place, held by a clip on one side. Remove the clip and tap the pin all the way out of the hole. Place these in a safe place for later and lower the hydraulic jack to the floor. Now you must go grab an empty forklift from around the area. If you are not certified to use a forklift, you must find someone who is. Take the forklift to the storage racks where the gate is kept. Carefully move the gate from the racks and to the floor near the work center. You can use a pallet jack to move the gate closer to the machine, so return the forklift to where it was found and head back to the work center. Move the extra wooden pallet kept with the new gate and place it below the gate you are removing. Remove the screws holding the gate in place. However, start by connecting it to the hoist to keep it from falling once the screws are removed. You may have to add an extra length of chain for the hoist to reach the floor. Once the screws are removed, carefully move the gate down to the pallet using the hoist. Grab a pallet jack from the area, move the old gate out of the way, and put the new gate where that one was. Connect the new gate to the hoist and begin to lift it. Slowly move the gate toward the machine as shown. If you are not confident enough to place the gate yourself, ask a coworker for help. Line the gate up with the screw holes on the sides and bottom. Grab the screws needed from the side of the machine and start by hand tightening them. Once all of the screws are inserted, fully tighten them with an Allen wrench. Let's review this section on changing the gate. Remove nest blocks or nest block plate from the machine. Find the gate needed for that part using the 3x5 setup card. For pre-finned and tubed cores, you'll use the door type. For other grills, you will need the fixture table type of gate. Now, gather the nest blocks for the bottom of the tubes. There are two types of nest blocks for the different size bends, either 1-inch bends or 0.8-inch bends. The blueprint for the tube used in that part will show you the size of the bend in the tube, or you can simply see which fits that size tube. The two are different enough it's difficult to confuse them, but make sure to double check. Place the nest blocks like you did when changing the rods. Count over 10 from the left in the back row and lay the blocks out the same way the rods are. Remember to match this layout with the blueprint. Once all of the nest blocks are inserted, slowly lower the ram until the tops of the balls on the rods are even with the tops of the nest blocks as shown. Grab the long rod again and pull on the lever to set the large black depth adjustment screws. Keep pulling on the lever until the screw stops spinning. Verify the balls are still in the correct position. Make sure they won't pass the top of the nest blocks or the rods may get bent during expansion. If everything is still in position, you have successfully set the depth for the rods during expansion. You can now continue with normal operation of the expander by placing the finned and tubed core onto the nest blocks. If needed, readjust the gate so it fits snug to the core using the adjustments on each side for height, length, and width. When you are finished, you do not have to remove the gate, but you must remove the nest blocks from the bottom of the machine when it is left alone for long periods of time. This is because the ram on the machine falls about 1 inch every hour due to gravity. So if the nest blocks are left in, the rods will be slowly lowered into the nest blocks and get bent. To avoid this damage to the rods, raise the ram fully anytime you are done operating. If you are not operating overnight, the rods should be okay. But if leaving the machine over the weekend, or if you don't plan on operating for a while, remove the nest blocks to be safe. Now, we'll go ahead and review this section. For pre-finned and tubed cores, use the individual nest blocks and match their layout with the rods and blueprint. For grills, use the nest block plates. There are two sizes of nest blocks, 1 inch and 0.8 inches. Remember to remove the nest blocks if the machine will not be used for a long period of time. Let's take a few moments to review all of the information contained in this video by going over some evaluation criteria for machine setup in WorkCenter 400. Number 1. The operator knows which bars to use for the part they are making, and verify the length of the bar using the 3x5 setup card. Number 2. The operator changes the rods correctly. This means the operator uses the 3x5 setup card to identify which rod to use for that unit and is able to replace the rods. Number 3. The operator can correctly set the rod depth. This means the operator is able to set the depth of the rods to where the top of the rod ball is even with the top of the nest block. Number 4. The operator identifies the first step in setting up for a multiple row core. This means they know how to check the setup card for the type of setup necessary for the unit. And number 5. The operator identifies the correct table to use on the expander for that part. This means they can find the gate required on the setup card and replace an old gate with a new one. That's all you need to know about machine setup in Workcenter 400 for the Grille Expand area. If you have any questions, be sure to ask your supervisor or coworkers for guidance, and thank you for your contribution toward making Red Dot a better company.